Hey there. Ritual here to give a big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. The magic of those family moments, that was you. And now there's new milestones to prep for in 2025. This new year, check clean, quality pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list with Ritual. We've done the research to create science-backed pregnancy support like our prenatal multivitamin, natal choline, and fertility support, all designed to be taken alongside each other. But don't just take our word for it. They're also third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified. So whether you're trying, thinking about trying, or already there, we don't have to tell you that prioritizing yourself can be the hardest part. That's why we're helping you get started today with 30% off a 3-month supply for a limited time at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show live and direct right here from the SHR Media Network, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California. Tonight, we've got another interview with Terrence McCAULEY. He is an author that I enjoy reading. We've had him on twice before, and he's a great guy, great cat, great interview. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome back thriller writer Terrence McCAULEY. He is the author of 8 books, now 9, since the publication of his newest novel, A Conspiracy of Ravens, released by Polis Books. Oh, but wait, is that really his newest book? Well, okay, hold that thought, all right? Now, I spoke to Terrence originally on August 9th of 2017, and then on December 15th of 2017, following the release of his book, A Murder of Crows. So we got to know Terrence and a little bit of his background, his history, his being a proud native of the Bronx in New York City. And that's exactly where he was born and raised. He spent, 27 years of his life there. He graduated from Fordham University, wanted to be an FBI profiler, and then changed his major to political science. And he had the luxury, this is pretty cool, of being able to walk to school his entire life. He's been working in government pretty much most of his life as well. Terrence McCAULEY became a political junkie at the age of 10 in 1984 when the conventions were starting. Mondale versus Reagan. Harken back to that. And so he kind of ended up following politics early. And politics and history have since then pretty much been a consistent love of Terrence McCAULEY, as well as movies. One of the things I remembered that he told me from one of the original interviews is that he comes from a long line of storytellers, and he enjoyed drawing throughout his ability to draw. He said peaked at about the age of 15. And as an aside, I remember my personal major mistake was not taking the class that I was invited, the Joe Kubert School of Cartooning, which also was in New York City. Heavy sigh, major regret. Terrence admires author Richard Matheson, for example, who ended up working in a whole bunch of genres as a respected author. Now, hold that thought for just a second. So that brings us to today. Terrence McCAULEY has a new book out, published by Polis Books, and it may or may not be linked in some way to his James Hicks thriller series of novels, and they include these, and I recommend each and every one of them. The first, Sympathy for the Devil. The second, A Murder of Crows. The third, A Conspiracy of Ravens. So that new book that I mentioned is called The Fairfax Incident, which takes place in New York City. So, Terrence McCAULEY, welcome back to the Saloon, sir.
How's it going, pal? Great to be here.
Thank you very, very much. So, this new book that you've got, that oddly enough I'm holding in my hands right now, though I'm not on video, tell us something about this book, who your protagonist is, and what is this guy doing in 1933 New York City?
Right. Well, I mean, the whole premise of this book was to continue my 1930s series. My first book was called Prohibition, and that was set in 1930 New York. That one won an award in 2008 for the Next Great Crime Writer contest. It was posted by True TV and HBO. So that was a big thrill for me to write that one and to win that series. Then I wound up doing a sequel to that book called Slow Burn, where I take a minor character from Prohibition, a corrupt Tammany Hall detective named Charlie Doherty, and write about him as he is pulled into a murder-kidnapping case that involves one of the wealthiest families in New York City. He thinks it's going to be a quick payday for him because he realizes that the victim comes from a very wealthy family, and all he's looking to do is to supplement his ill-gotten gains by being a crooked cop and try to get the money from the family to keep his mouth shut about some of the more salacious details of the case. Turns out, though, he actually winds up caring about the family and does everything he can to solve the murder and kidnapping case with the family known as the Van Dorns. In the Fairfax incident, which is the latest version, we meet Charlie again after he is thrown off the force, after events that take place in Slow Burn, and he is now a private detective working for the Van Dorn family that I just mentioned. However, he has an open client list, and Mr. Van Dorn asks him to look into the suicide of a Mr. Fairfax, whose widow believes that he did not commit suicide, but that, in fact, he was murdered. As Charlie begins to dig through this case that he believes is going to be a slam dunk because it's clear the guy killed himself, he finds that it is indeed not as simple as he thought. And as his investigation unfolds, he finds himself at odds with some of the most dangerous people who have ever lived. That's the story.
You know, no one, the wife, she doesn't want to believe that he committed suicide. And when there's a suicide in the family, no one wants to believe it at all. But his job, he discovers, Charlie Doherty, is, okay, she doesn't want to believe it's suicide, but there is no denying that at all. I mean, it is a clear-cut case of suicide. So he recrafts and rephrases the question. It's not a matter of, did he commit suicide? Now it's a matter of, okay, why did he commit suicide?
Right. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. I mean, I didn't give myself an out where there could have been any question that somebody else did it. No, he did. I mean, Mr. Fairfax did indeed kill himself. And what we get to as you read the book, you realize the wife isn't asking the right question. She's not asking whether or not he did it. She's saying there must have been a reason why he did it, because he wasn't decent enough to do it on his own. So what she was really hiring Charlie to do was find out why. And in the course of his investigation, he certainly does find out why.
You know, I think it's clear. Well, hell, clear. You said it. You're a fan of history. And I think this book showcases that love of history. And I've got a ton of questions, but I need to interject this, if I might. I've read all your books. I'll continue to read all of your future books. I think it's a journey, and I'm enjoying the ride. But I want to point out that for me, it's a little bit of an honor being able to, as a reader, watch you and read you really develop as an author. I said it before, and I'll say it again here for the people that are listening. Each book just gets better. Yeah, that's okay. That's kind of a hackneyed phrase in the publishing industry. I know that, but I mean it. I think it's thrilling to watch you expand your skills and your writing chops with each and every book. And see, that's what makes me want to continue to read your books in order to find out just what you have in your future store for me and for other readers. I'm just enjoying the hell out of this damn journey.
Well, I'm glad that you put it that way, because that's exactly how I write it. My first book, like I said, was Prohibition, so everyone thinks Sympathy for the Devil was my first book, which is the first book in the James Hicks series,
right?
Which is part of the university. That one wasn't my first book. That was actually my third book. My first one was Prohibition, and that won an award, so I was pretty happy, and I got off to a really good start. So did Slow Burn. won the New Pulp Award in 2014. But then I continued to grow.
Hey there. Ritual here to give a big shout out to you for making it through the hectic holiday season. The magic of those family moments, that was you. And now there's new milestones to prep for in 2025. This new year, check clean, quality pregnancy nutrient support off your to-do list with Ritual. We've done the research to create science-backed pregnancy support like our prenatal multivitamin, natal choline, and fertility support, all designed to be taken alongside each other. But don't just take our word for it. They're also third-party tested for microbes and heavy metals and Clean Label Project certified. So whether you're trying, thinking about trying, or already there, we don't have to tell you that prioritizing yourself can be the hardest part. That's why we're helping you get started today with 30% off a 3-month supply for a limited time at ritual.com/podcast. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Because the more I wrote, the more people read my stuff, the more feedback I got from people who read it, from my readers. And they told me what they thought worked in the first 2 books. They told me what they didn't think worked. They told me that they wanted to learn a little bit more about my characters in general. So that way, when I started Sympathy for the Devil, I wanted to first get everybody to buy into the fact that I was writing about an intelligence organization that you might not necessarily identify with as the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, because I didn't want to write a book where I had to spend an awful lot of time doing a ton of research into how those organizations really operated. I wanted to tell the story about the world I wanted to create, and so that's why I made the university completely separate, completely autonomous, and a creation of my own. So in Sympathy for the Devil, I get you to buy into that world. And then as I move into A Murder of Crows and A Conspiracy of Ravens, I get you to buy into the character more. Because as you've read, and I hope other people who are listening have read, you see that the story starts to involve Hicks more than just his organization. And I need you to buy into that in order to continue that journey that you mentioned earlier, that you're going with me throughout all of these books, including the Fairfax incident.
Like I said, this really is, in my estimation, your best book yet. And that's why we're going to talk about a new book that you've got forthcoming. We'll get to that in a moment. But I go back to, that's why this is a journey for me, and this is why I'm really enjoying the journey, because it's like watching someone really get into the real thick of their writing. They grow, they expand, and for as far as I'm concerned, that's just fun as hell. I'm enjoying it. I like to promote new authors. I love the hell out of promoting you, because I think you're an author that's really, you have a hell of a future, and I think you're really going to go places. That's why I want people to read you. Now, that said, about going back to the Fairfax incident, this just isn't a random spot in time that you're covering. There's a purpose for going back to 1933. Can you tell people, without really spoiling the book, because I want people to read the book, now, why is going back to 1933 important?
Well, I wanted to set it in the same era that I had Prohibition and Slow Burn in, which is 1930 and 1931 respectively, and 32 respectively. The reason why I did that was because it was an interesting time in our nation's history and an interesting time in New York's history, too. You had the end of the Roaring Twenties, you had the beginning of the Great Depression, and you had the death of Prohibition. And at that time, you had the underground economy of illegal booze starting to fray, and you had other people that had been on the fringes of crime actually starting to take over, as you had the older ethnic populations like the Irish, who had been here for a long time, begin to move into the mainstream. So there was a lot of turmoil, and out of turmoil comes great storylines. So in the Fairfax incident, I do it in 1933 because there was an ugly time in our nation's history. It was when FDR became president after a very contentious election. His primary fight was a lot more contentious than his general win. But the country was also undergoing a lot of great turmoil. A lot of, the Great Depression was really in full swing at that point. And at home, you had rise to a lot of fascist movements. And one of those fascist movements was the German-American Bund that started off as a regular, almost like the Ancient Order of Hibernians, that promoted Germanic pride and trying to cast off the shadow of defeat from that the German people suffered in World War I. But as that movement grew, it got a little bit more sinister behind the scenes. And that's what I explore in this book. And the events that happen in this book, in terms of some of the camps that were open for the young people of Germanic descent, actually were opened in places in Long Island and New Jersey and in other places across the country too. So I wanted to be able to use my love of history and use it as part of my novel.
So the book, The Fairfax Incident, folks, we're talking to Terrence McCAULEY, the author of The Fairfax Incident and a whole host of prior books. So this book, The Fairfax Incident, really does have a direct linkage to the university and the world of James Hicks in 2018. And that's why I say, folks, you need to read the James Hicks series of books. And for those who haven't read you before, and I'm trying to get you some sales, dude, can you give an overview of this series? Who is James Hicks, and what is the university? I mean, this is now you're talking about your thriller series.
Right, exactly right. I mean, I have this dream of mine that everything I've ever written is going to be related somehow. That's what even the Western that I've got coming out has a very, very loose correlation to what I'm working on now, because I don't want to ever have anybody think that when they buy one of my books that it's like an investment, like getting into Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. I'm never going to get that sense, because I personally don't like writing that way, and I don't like reading books like that. But I definitely want people to say, oh yeah, I've heard about that character. I remember that. I'm glad this is all related, because then I like how these references to characters keep popping up. The university series is something that I created because I love spy thrillers, I love spy books, I love spy films. I wanted to, but I always found them to be a little bit predictable, especially in the early 2000s, and then before Bourne and the new James Bond reboot. I found them all to get a little bit formulaic, and I wanted to try to write something that I would have wanted to watch or read. And I loved Le Carre. I loved his Smiley books, but I wanted to tell something that was a little bit more accessible. So I set it in modern-day New York about a fictional intelligence organization that in the first book, Sympathy for the Devil, is simply called the University. You know that they have technology. You know that they have, back then it was actually what I would call near technology, because they communicate all through their cell phones. And back then, cell phones weren't as capable as they are today. I actually got a lot of people sending me emails saying there's absolutely no way anybody's going to be able to have their thumb scanned and their face taken, facial recognition software used to open their cell phone with a cell phone that size. There was absolutely no way it's ever going to happen. And I felt like saying, pal, they're doing it in Asia. They're doing it elsewhere. It's just not here yet. But I did use, so I wanted to capitalize on the movement at the mood at the time of, it was the post-Snowden era. A lot of stuff that the government was doing and wasn't previously known was now in the public record. And I wanted to capitalize on that mood of curiosity to introduce you to a new kind of character. And a guy like James Hicks is that new kind of character. He is not Jason Bourne. He is not James Bond. He has more of a pulp feel to him, because I wanted the audience to be able to relate to him. He's not necessarily a master of disguise, but he's completely forgettable. He has a personality that he has a steel core through him, but he can bend and change based on whatever the situation requires him to be. And that's the mark of a good spy, a good intelligence officer. So in Sympathy for the Devil, it opens up a common element, a betrayal. One of his people betrays him. He thought that they were on a regular assignment. They betrayed him. He doesn't know why. Why did they go to all of these lengths when the guy was working on a simple assignment? It mushrooms from there, of course, as good spy thrillers usually do, to be far more involved than that. Then in the second book, called The Murder of Crows, more of that mystery is revealed. More of what the university can do is revealed. And you get to understand more about Hicks' motivation and the university's dark side, if you will. And you get to also see that despite all of this technology, there's still humanity at the core of this organization. The university also comes in direct conflict with the NSA and the CIA and the DIA. So it humanizes Hicks in that the hunter has now become the hunted. Then in A Conspiracy of Ravens, you see Hicks' more vengeful side, vengeful for his own personal losses and also for the country that he's trying to defend. He's trying to defend the West. He's trying to defend the United States. And he draws on a team from all over the world to help him do that. So I've established that world, but I always had people ask me, how in the hell did the university come to start in the first place? And that's why I wrote the Fairfax incident, because I wanted to tie everything I've written together, my 1930s stuff all the way straight up through to my modern day stuff that I just mentioned.
See, and that's why I think that's a brilliant thread, because you wouldn't necessarily see that a series of books published in 16, 17, 18 is going to lead back to 1933. That's the brilliance of that. However, talking about James Hicks, I'm guessing that you are writing a fourth James Hicks book following A Conspiracy of Ravens?
I have, yes. I have a 60,000-word draft done. I worked on it right after A Conspiracy of Ravens. It's my publisher and I, Polis Books, haven't talked about what the future is going to be for the university series or James Hicks, but we're going to work on it. And I definitely intend on telling far more about James Hicks than you've read so far. I actually, if people read the first three books, they'll see that I slowly expand the team to not only include Hicks, but other interesting characters as well. And my dream is to tell one more book with Hicks as the central character and then spin it off where the minor characters then get their own book and continue the onward momentum that I create in the earlier books, too. So it'll all be thematic. It'll all be about the same kind of the same story that we're covering, the same university and up against the vanguard, but it'll be told from different points of view, which keeps it fresh and keeps me fresh as an author as well. Okay. And I'd love to be able to tell Charlie Doherty more about Charlie Doherty's journey from the 1930s onward.
Back to the Fairfax incident. I'd like to make these observations and see what you think about them. To me, you've written the book, you've portrayed New York City almost like a character unto itself. I'd like to read a passage from that. Traffic turning onto 5th eased up enough for me to cross the street, and I began walking south again, looking forward to a nice quiet stroll on my way to meet a contact at the library. But there's really no such thing as a nice quiet walk in Manhattan. Trucks were always backfiring. The sound of pneumatic hammers pounding away at concrete or asphalt was never too far away. Car horns honked and people cursed. Throw in the flutter of pigeon wings for good measure, and that was as tranquil as New York City got. It's a whole lot of different sounds all mixed together in one big urban symphony, but it's usually the same sounds heard over and over. See, that kind of stuff just resonates with me. You make New York City almost like it is a character itself. And then further, you go not just into New York City, but you go into a little bit of history again, and you tell us you end up telling us something about the Empire State Building that I certainly didn't know. Here's another passage. The Fairfax Liability Company had leased several floors in the Empire State Building right after the dump first opened a couple of years before. It might have been the tallest building in the world, but they built the damn thing in the middle of nowhere, a dead spot on the city map. It wasn't near any subways. Penn Station was several blocks away, and Grand Central was even further. Throw in the fact that you could actually feel the building sway on windy days, and let's just say companies weren't exactly lining up begging for space. With the Depression on, there weren't that many companies left. See, that's the kind of writing that I love. That's why I say that you're really getting into stuff. And of course, you're writing about what you know, and you're writing about what you love. And let me go one more. I have one other little passage that I'd like to go into. It's no secret that you're a cigar aficionado. Somehow, I don't know how this happened, but somehow that somehow managed to manifest itself into the Fairfax incident. And here's another passage. A good breeze kicked up, and I moved behind the alcove to fire up one of the cigars I'd bought at Nat's. I might not have had the chance to smoke it with Blythe, but there was no reason I couldn't enjoy it now. I took a good pull and let the smoke drift nice and slow through my nose. Nothing like fine tobacco to get the brain in working order, at least my brain anyway. Authors write what they know. You're writing what you know. This is why I enjoy the book. This is why I'm saying that it's the best book, in my opinion, that you've read yet, or excuse me, that you've written yet. This is why. Terrence McCAULEY, I enjoy the hell out of this journey that you're taking us.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's also good because I'm able to fill you in on a little bit of history that a lot of people don't know. I mean, they see the skyline, they take it for granted. They come and do the tours and they hear all the good stuff, but they don't understand that when the Empire State Building was built, it was built by Al Smith, who had just lost the governorship to FDR. He was a very bitter man about that. And then FDR went on to beat him for the presidential primary in 32 by some pretty nasty means. They beat him on the floor vote. So it was a very interesting journey for Al Smith. But it was built, and then nobody went into it. And it was filled with, they had to fill it with state agencies because no one wanted to go into the damn thing. It was noisy, it was windy, it scared people. And when it was first built, I did cut this part out of it. They built it, right now you see the big antenna on top of it, but underneath it, if you see older pictures, it's got a curved dome on top of a tall, pedestal. The reason why it was curved was because they wanted to dock blimps there. They thought that you could actually land airships there.
That's right.
And so they tried it once, and the Navy aborted it. They said, "The hell with this. We're never doing this again." And they just killed the idea, and then they put a radio tower on top of the damn thing. But, I mean, if you go into it, on the inside, the lobby's beautiful. But when you go upstairs for any of the tours, it's pretty bare bones. I mean, it's just walls and doors, and it's... it's a beautiful, iconic building. I love it. The Chrysler Building's my favorite skyscraper, but it's definitely, a lot of people don't go into the history of that, and so that's why I wanted to put it there. In the book, I also mentioned the building of Rockefeller Center, which a lot of people think was always there, but it wasn't. It used to be a greenhouse, so that was all built because of the Rockefeller family.
The next logical question for me is this. Do you think we're going to see Charlie Doherty, Van Dorn, Father Mullins, or Hauser again?
Oh, I hope so. God, I hope so. I mean, because the other is, too, with all of my books, they all have a different, they all have a different narrative feel to them. The Charlie Doherty books, for example, are always told in the first person. And I didn't intend it that way. It just made sense. So I always wrote them in the first person. All my other books are in the third person. My prose in Sympathy for the Devil is a little bit more elaborate, but not much. In Prohibition, it's far more clipped because in that style, and I've only written one book about, I've written two books about Cherry Quinn, the protagonist in that book. The style there was more influenced by James Ellroy. So I'm influenced by different people when I'm writing each and every genre. So my Western's a little bit more verbose because that's what people expect. But I want to tell more about Doherty because I've got so much more to say about him. I think his journey has proven to be very popular with people, and I'd love to be able to continue it because if you think of the way the series has gone now, I take you all the way through to the present. Can you imagine what I can do with pre-World War One? Pre-World War II, then World War II, and then all the way up through the Cold War. And there's endless possibilities there, and I'd love to have the chance to tell that story.
The Cold War, in and of itself, it's such an incredibly fertile ground for imaginations. OMG, you're right. The things that you could do with that. Now, I made reference to Richard Matheson earlier. People would know him from, he wrote The Incredible Shrinking Man. The book that was also translated into I Am Legend, which was transformed into, the second film, I Am Legend. Not quite as good as the first. But I see, I see that Matheson.
Yeah, the Omega Man.
Bingo! Yes, the Omega Man. Yeah, and
That was horrible.
It was so tacky. I loved the hell out of it in 1975 or 1976 when it came out. And then he dies. He dies on the cross. With in a sculptured fountain. Such a martyr. Well, anyway, it seems that Matheson is apparently rubbing off on you. So you've got another book coming out next month, September 25th, and it's titled Where the Bullets Fly. It's called the first in a blazing new series, and it features, obviously, a brand new character, Sheriff Aaron Mackey, and it takes place in the Old West. So, crossing genres and enjoying it, and I'll be enjoying it as well. I can't wait to see what you do with the Wild West genre. Is there any, maybe a little bit of a hint that you can give us with regard to that forthcoming book, Where the Bullets Fly?
Sure. It is, like I said, about a brand new character that I've created. It's about Aaron Mackey. He is a sheriff in a fictional Montana town called Dover Station, and he finds himself and his deputy, Billy Sunday, up against a gang of marauders who are threatening the town and hold the town hostage. They attack the town. Mackey thwarts the assault on the town, and then he chases the attackers until he gets back the people who were kidnapped by them. So it's an awful lot of emotions. It's got my signature amount of action and character development. It's actually the first book that I've written, believe it or not, that made my wife cry, which,
nice.
Given the fact that she's half a Marine herself. So, I mean, this girl has Mayan blood in her. They do not cry. They are not a crying people, Guatemala. So, my wife was born here, but her family's from Guatemala. But, they are not known for their tears. So for her to say, wow, that was a moving scene, I wore that as a badge of pride. But this one is, people who are familiar with my stuff will find a lot here to like. And it's funny how I've talked to people about switching genres, and then I'm writing Westerns. And it's amazing the feedback I've gotten from people turning up their nose and saying, oh, that stuff, it's all bigoted stuff. I said, what are you talking about? And they say, oh, cowboys and Indians. I mean, no one really reads that stuff anymore. And when I got the contract to do this book, I actually went to the Western Writers of America event that they had in Billings, Montana. And I was absolutely floored by the amount of scholarship in that room and at that event. I mean, the knowledge of history, the knowledge of general fiction, the knowledge of everything pertaining to the West, old and new. I was absolutely floored by it. And for people to turn up their nose at this genre without even reading it, it's just amazing to me.
No, it's amazing.
So that's the kind of thing I want to change.
It's amazing because what was the Wild West? Oh, that's right. The Wild West was nothing but immigrants.
Right.
Good Lord. So, I'm sorry, go ahead,
exactly
sir.
Right. I mean, it's a purely American story. It is not all Pollyannish. It is not all glory. I understand that. And but that's what's beautiful about it. There's so much room to explore it. It's not just about cowboys and Indians. It's not just about the shootout in the middle of Main Street at high noon, which never happened anyway. I mean, you know your guns. You know damn well that you're not going to break your ass to get all the way out to the middle of nowhere and stand there and let somebody shoot at you after going through all of that. It's just not going to happen. I mean, and the same thing like when people, when these movies show the bad guys riding into town and robbing the bank and everyone cowering in the stores as the bad guys ride out. That didn't happen either.
No.
People, as the research I've done on it, people would say, hey, they're stealing our money. There was no FDIC back then. It wasn't backed by anything. They're riding out with their gold. So what happened? The shopkeepers grabbed shotguns, went out and shot the bastards as they were trying to get away. And more often than not, they stopped them. So, I mean, it's a history that unfortunately has been obscured by 1950s television that was great for inspiring interest in the general West, but when you actually do the history of it, it's so much more than what we saw on Gunsmoke and the Rifleman and places like that. So that's why I was drawn to the genre, and that's why I wanted to switch for a little bit.
Folks, you need to pick up Terrence McCauley's newest book, The Fairfax Incident, which takes place in New York City in 1933. While you're at it, pick up his James Hicks series, Sympathy for the Devil, A Murder of Crows, A Conspiracy of Ravens. And then coming out next month, we just discussed his release of a new genre book, Where the Bullets Fly. So Terrence McCauley, thanks for being here tonight in the Saloon. So please tell folks, if you can, where they can find your books, websites you have, and any of the social media that you'd like people to know about, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I am on Facebook. It's Terrence, Terrence, McCauley, McCauley. I've got an author's page there. I've also got a personal page. I'm on Twitter at @TMcCauley_NYC. I'm also on Instagram under Terrence P. McCauley. And I also have my own website, TerrenceMcCauley.com. All of my books are available online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the regular places, including IndieBound, which is a good place for you to support independent bookstores. If they don't have my book in your independent bookstore or your library or Barnes & Noble, you can ask them to order it, and they can do that. Polis has got great distribution, so they'll be able to get it in their stores right away. Also, libraries are great, too. And the only thing I suggest you do for my books or the books of any author you like, fiction or nonfiction, please take a couple of minutes when you're done, whether you liked it or not, and leave a review on Amazon and or Goodreads, because every single review helps. Even if it's a 2-star review and you didn't like it, every review helps, and it with getting the word out there and also appearing on search engines. So I always remind people to do that when they get a chance.
Terrence McCauley, as always, it is a unique pleasure to have you back here in the Saloon. You are always invited back to comment anytime about books or writing or cigars or New York City, politics. I know you dig politics. We can talk about I don't know, honey badgers or bad tortellini or anything else that happens to cross your mind, okay? So that invitation is always out there. Terrence McCauley, thank you so very kindly for your time right now. You take care and be safe, my friend.
You too, my friend. Thank you.
You bet. Good night.